Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. There's a new report out from OpenVault that's showing continued increase in broadband usage, including in a tier that would be people that are using 2 terabytes or more. There's been a big surge there. We'll talk about that and the implications for broadband service providers in just a moment. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So as I mentioned, there's this new report out, and there's been a big surge in people using lots and lots of bandwidth. They're calling them super users in a sense. So that would be like they're using 2 terabytes of more data per month, and this is going to have an impact on broadband service providers, especially as more and more people are trying to do gigabit service. That's where a lot of this is coming from, because you give people more bandwidth and they're going to use more. The more you give them, the more they're going to eat in general. So this does have implications for broadband service providers as far as how they are going to price their services, where they're going to set their usage limits. Are they going to do fixed rate broadband across the board, or are they going to have policies in place where they bill based on the amount of broadband data used? So we'll see here what they decide to do. But I was going to go ahead and look at the story and then just take a few little points out of the report that talk about kind of the implications of that. So here we've got, again, 2 terabytes of superpower users growing faster than 1 terabyte users. The superpower user category climbed 31% from a year ago compared to 18% growth among 1 terabyte power users. So this is how much data people are transferring in a month. And normally, this time of year, the first quarter, things settle down a little bit. But that was not the case in this category. Things continued to increase. And I'm sure this is a combination of factors. It is probably how many more people are getting access to, let's say, gigabit speeds, or not even gigabit speeds, just as the plans continue to increase. And a lot of service providers may be upgrading people to new higher speeds and not necessarily charging them for more speed, which is good. But that does mean that people can use more. And then also just over time, people are cutting the cord from their traditional pay TV service. So they drop the video pay TV service that's delivered in another way, and they're getting that now through streaming. So they're doing over-the-top streaming through either a aggregated video service like YouTube TV, or they're streaming more Netflix and Disney Plus, those kinds of things. And then, of course, you've got multiple people in a family that are doing that all at once. So you might have the kids in their room streaming Disney, you got the parents downstairs streaming Netflix or whatever. So then you got all the other small short-form videos that are going on. So lots of increased data usage. Faster plans are all contributing to this. And here it shows this is a chart that shows the usage. So you see here, when they say UBB, that's usage-based billing, and then this is fixed-rate billing. So they're kind of differentiating the two here. Then you've got a weighted average. So you're seeing here, this is what they're calling the power users, those that are doing 1 terabyte, or power users, I guess, and then they're calling the 2 terabyte super power users. So you've got, you can see here that it says here, although 2 terabyte group is growing at a faster rate, the 1 terabyte group remains much larger. So again, you see here there's a 1 terabyte group for your usage-based billing and for your fixed rate billing. And then here's the 2 terabyte for usage-based billing and for your fixed rate billing. And one thing that you do see, which is not too surprising, is that when you're doing a usage-based billing model, you're going to have fewer of these really high usage folks, because they're downloading less. They're downloading and uploading less because they're keeping track of what they're doing, and they're not doing it willy-nilly. Or it could be that if there's 2 providers in an area and one is usage-based billing and the other one is fixed-rate billing, they're going to go over to the fixed-rate billing provider because they don't need to worry about extra charges. So that can be good or bad, because what happens over time is that, again, if you've got those 2 providers, then the customers will all migrate. All the heavy usage customers will migrate to the fixed-rate billing. And that gets more challenging for them. Their costs go up. Maybe they start to get some congestion on the network, and then everybody starts to suffer. And the people that have the usage-based billing can tend to manage that better, because they are getting compensated for people that are using more bandwidth. And again, they lose some of those people that are going to be doing the highest usage. And usage-based billing makes sense. I think it's I think it's the way that things eventually are going to go. Not necessarily paying for every bit, but people are going to get a certain amount of usage, and then if you exceed that, you're going to have to pay over that amount. And if you think about it, if you just consider water service as an analogy, if you are there, let's say you're just a two-person home, husband and a wife in a home, and they're using a normal amount of water, they're taking showers, washing the dishes, they wash the car every now and then, whatever. So, but across the street, you've got a big house with a family of, let's say 4 teenagers, all taking showers and all of that, 6 loads of laundry instead of 2. Maybe they wash their cars more often. They got more cars. Maybe the guy across the street's got a system that waters the lawn once a week. So you would not want to be paying the same rate that they were for your water. In other words, you would not want the water company subsidizing their high usage by increasing your bill. So you can look at broadband in a similar way, because it is in some ways very much usage based. I mean, the costs do go up. They go up basically on how much people use. So the implications of the findings, it says here, are multifaceted. Cable operators and other ISPs will, of course, need to ensure that the capacities of their networks are staying well ahead of data usage trends. So you can go ahead and give everybody a gig, but you just need to remember, when you do that, more people are going to be using more data, and then you've got not just the end user connection, not just the last mile, but you've got your whole network, your broadband network that needs to be able to handle that. Plus you've got your bandwidth, or your backbone connection, your bandwidth out to the backbone, that also needs to be big enough to handle all of that usage that's coming in from your customers. So you need to be wary of that. So the trend also indicates that broadband service operators that employ data usage policies and data caps might need to reassess their monthly limits to ensure that only a small percentage of their total customer base exceeds their monthly data limits. So what they're saying there, and there's a point to be made there, that if you are going to have a usage data limit, and then after that, you don't want to shut people off, hopefully. I mean, you want to say if they're going to hit that limit, then you can charge them extra. You do need to adjust that as people start using more. As the average amount of usage goes up, you need to do that. Otherwise, you start having to charge everybody for usage, and nobody likes that. I think the best policy is to try to cover most of your customers in your base bandwidth that you give them, and then those people that are really exceeding that amount, then you can charge them. So they're saying that they probably need to start looking at this and adjusting this. And that would be the case if you, let's say, were offering 250 megabits per second last year, and then suddenly you upgrade everybody where they can get a gig, then you're going to have more usage, and you're probably going to have to adjust that. But there are other implications for this that we'll see as well. It's not just about that. It also means that maybe operators should consider going to usage-based billing if they're not doing that. Here they show first quarter 2020 broadband usage key findings, data usage trends, billing by billing type. So again, you've got these different billing types. This is Q1 2021 is the light blue, then this is fourth quarter of last year, and this is first quarter of this year. So you're comparing the same periods here plus fourth quarter there in the middle. And you can see here that we've got, this is the average weighted data, but what's I think is more interesting is breaking these out. So you've got first quarter 2021 for your fixed rate billing. You can see that here compared to your usage-based billing. So again, it's going to be higher. Then you've got your, this was last quarter of last year, 576 gigabytes transferred compared to 510 for usage-based billing. And then you've got this past quarter, January through March, you've got 545, almost 546 gigabytes transferred versus, let's say, 500 gigabytes transferred for those that are doing usage-based billing. Customers gravitating to speed tiers of a gig or more. Again, if you're going to give people that kind of speed, they're going to want to go there depending on the cost. So with the speed trend heading toward gigabit and multi-gigabit tiers, it's no surprise that customers provisioned for 1 gig or more are on the rise. Certainly provisioned. OpenVault found that 13.4% of customers were provisioned for speeds of a gig or more in Q1 2022. The largest group of subs were being provisioned for speeds of 200 megs to 400 megs, with just 7.6% getting speeds of 50 megs or less. So again, as service providers are upgrading their plants and we're trying to get everybody over that 100 megabit per second threshold, then you're going to be seeing fewer and fewer people on these 50 meg plans. And it's showing here, so this is your biggest group, again, the 200 by 400, that's almost 50% there that are in that range. We've got 100 by 200, And this actually decreased quite a bit that we'll see here in a minute on some bullet points that I'm going to put up. I believe that's where it was. Then you've got your, again, a small group here, this 50 to 100. This is shrinking. Then you've got your other kinds of areas here. But you can see the gig here at 13.4%. So this piece of the pie has been growing and will continue to do so as more service providers put in fiber and they decide, hey, we're just going to give everybody a gig. That's what we're going to say we're giving them. That's what we're giving them. So again, the service providers can do that, but they just need to be careful at doing that and how they're going to price that. It might be better to have a gig for those people that really want and need a gig, because you don't need a gig. It's nice to have a gig, but you don't necessarily need a gig. Even doing streaming and other stuff, I mean, if you've got a half a gig, you know, and you're streaming movies and these kinds of things, you can generally have really good service, even with multiple people doing that in the home. So you don't necessarily need a gig, and maybe you save the gig for people that really need it and you charge more for that. Notably, the slice of subs getting speeds of 1 gig or higher jumped 37% from a year ago, while those on tiers of 50 megabits per second or less shrunk 25% when compared to OpenVault's study from Q1 2021. And then they've got a few data points here, but I actually pulled, I think, those same ones out and a few more out of the report here that I was going to show. Let's see. So just, you know, what does this all come down to? So here's just some of the little tidbits that came out of this report. So some of this may be repeated from what was in the article, but average monthly data usage was up 11% from first quarter 2021. So that went up to 513.8 gigs. So up 11% average monthly data usage. Average downstream usage was 481.3 gigs. And that's more than double what it was in 2018. So they're looking at back at 2018, a little further back there, when it was 203 gigabytes. And it went up to 481 gigabytes now in this past quarter. And you know, a lot of that has to do with more Zoom calls. I mean, obviously there was a lot of that going on during the pandemic, and some of that has calmed down. But a lot of people are still Zooming on meetings. They realize how they got used to it, and now fewer people are traveling still because of COVID, but also fewer people are traveling with just easier sometimes. If you don't need to travel, you can do these meetings. And there's people like me that are streaming more, a lot of, you know, that kind of upstream traffic. You've got average upstream usage has nearly tripled during the same period. So you've got, that's really the upstream that I was talking about. So your upstream has tripled during the same period. So it went up to 32.5 gigabits on average. And you can see that, you know, everybody talks about symmetrical internet need, you know, that's really, I think, right at this point, it's still really a marketing thing. It's a checkbox. It's a fiber company can say, hey, we offer symmetrical speeds. It's not necessarily needed, because even with all of the additional upstream traffic that we're seeing, a lot of people don't use, but most people are doing download, right? Because mostly they're viewing stuff. They're being entertained by video streaming. They're going to web pages. Most of that's coming back to them. There is, like I say, some upstream stuff, more upstream stuff like what I'm doing right now, but it's still, the vast majority is downstream. So we see that here, I think, being reflected. So in 2017, less than 10% of subs consumed between 500 gigs and 1 terabyte. Today it's almost 25%. So we can see, again, those super users have gone up quite a bit. Providers with usage-based billing have 27% higher average revenue per user from 1 gig customers than fixed rate billing providers. And that's probably because they're not just saying you get a gig and here you go. They are, I'm sure, having separate tiers with different pricing, but I think also probably have usage-based billing in there, where if you exceed a certain amount of usage, like let's say half a gig in a month instead of a terabyte or something like that, then you have to pay more. Subscribers on usage-based billing in unlimited usage tiers use nearly 3 times more upstream bandwidth, 206 gigabytes, than other usage-based billing subscribers, 69 gigabytes. So you can see those again on subscribers on usage-based billing and unlimited usage tiers. Oh, so if you're on usage-based billing, but it's an unlimited usage, then they're going to use 3 times more than on other usage-based billing subscribers. So that would mean, I think, those probably that are charging if you go over that amount. Providers with usage-based billing saw a 42.3% decline in 50 megabits per second and below subscribers from last year. Providers with fixed-rate billing saw an increase in that category of 16.7%. That's really interesting, and that's not surprising. So you've got this 50 meg tier, which they've said has been shrinking, right? But you can see most of that shrinkage, in fact, all the shrinkage, I guess, for the most part, was from usage-based billing. because providers with fixed rate billing actually saw more people in that category. And I think what accounts for that is people, if there's, let's say a fixed rate provider has different tiers. So they've got a 50 meg plan, they've got a 200 meg plan, they've got a half a gig, whatever. And they're charging the least amount for 50 megs, but let's say it's an unlimited usage plan. So you get 50 megs, but it's unlimited. You can use whatever you want. Well, people are going to migrate to that. Your heavy users, especially, are going to migrate to that because it's like, why pay for more if I'm going to, if I don't need to? So they have the 50 meg plan and they find it's fine for their needs, and they migrate down to that. Whereas you don't see that on these usage-based billing kinds of things. So they saw a decline in that particular plan. So the usage-based ones are doing a better job of upselling the higher tier plans and getting more revenue from that than the folks that are kind of a fixed rate billing plan. Fixed rate billing operators had 3 times more subs in the lowest speed tier of 50 megabits per less, and the 100 to 200 megabit speed tier declined by 54% in first quarter 2022 as more subs migrated to higher speeds. So a lot of people that were in the 100 to 200 migrated up, and we have a lot of people migrating down. And again, what tends to happen is if you are offering different tiers but not necessarily charging for usage, sometimes your highest usage people will be in that lowest tier. And if you don't have if you're not focusing on trying to upgrade them to a plan that better suits their needs, they're going to stay there because it costs them less. Whereas if you're doing usage-based billing and you're differentiating in that way, and people are using more bandwidth, then they have to upgrade. They'd rather upgrade. So they don't want to stay in the 50 meg plan and then start paying by the bit when they exceed it, when they could go in a higher price plan and maybe that will meet their needs. And then if they start transferring more, they go to another higher plan and that will meet their needs. That way they're not having to pay for every bit or byte that they're transferring. So usage-based billing, I think, is going to be the model of the future. I know a lot of people are resisting that, but it does tend to work best as far as the cost modeling. And again, they're having more success in getting more revenue per user, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, a lot of times we say, oh, revenue per user, that's bad, profit's bad. But no, I mean, you have to pay for the service, right? So again, just like the water company, you don't want to have to subsidize your high usage users by charging your low usage users more per month. You want people to pay for what they're using. It makes perfect sense, I think. So I think that was it for this, yeah. So anyway, I think it's interesting. We see this report come out once a quarter or so, and what we've consistently seen is the usage climbing over time. We especially saw the big bump up during the pandemic, especially on the upstream. Downstream usage went up during the pandemic, but upstream usage really went up. Some of that has come back down since more people have gone back to work and the kids have gone back to school, that kind of thing. But it's still higher than it was, and we're still seeing increase in that upstream. But again, far more downstream usage is what we're seeing in general. So gig symmetrical sounds great on the marketing, for a fiber provider, let's say competing against a cable provider, but not necessarily needed yet. In the future, maybe it'll get a little bit closer, but still, downstream is where it's at. And we're seeing that again through mostly streaming. Streaming is really where a lot of the usage is coming from, as more and more people are cutting the cord and they're getting their entertainment. And one of the reasons that this is so costly for service providers, well, let's say it's somebody that was providing that pay TV plan. So number one, they lose the revenue from that pay TV customer, and then that pay TV customer stays with them on the broadband plan, and they start using way more bandwidth. So they've lost the pay TV revenue, and then the customer starts using more bandwidth, so their costs have gone up as well. So that's an issue. And again, the other thing is just the increased usage across the overall network, because when you've got a bunch of people streaming these long-form, HD movies, multiple people at a time, then that raises your floor, right? It's not like the old days where somebody might download a file and it might take, well, in the old days it might take like 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, it was a big file. But today, somebody clicks and downloads a file. It happens pretty quick, depending on how big it is. It might be a few seconds to a minute, a really big file. And then that's done, right? So you can kind of, that doesn't hit you all at once. But if you've got a bunch of people streaming at prime time, you've got to have enough bandwidth for that. So that raises your floor, and it raises your floor over a long period of time, hours, right? Kids home from school, parents home, everybody's watching movies and TV shows. So your bandwidth floor goes way up, and you need to buy enough bandwidth for that. You can't assume you've got to buy enough bandwidth for that. In fact, you really need to buy over that, because there are events, again, entertainment kinds of events that happen, that then there'll be these spikes in bandwidth, and you don't want your customers to be unhappy if they're trying to see the, what's a good example? Well, I was going to say one of those, I won't say that, but anyway, any kind of event, could be a sporting event. Let's say a sporting event is on that a lot of people are streaming. You don't want them to be disappointed when they go in there to watch that sporting event and then suddenly everything's spinning and it's slow because a lot of people are doing that at once. So you got to plan a little bit of overhead for that as well. Thanks for joining me. If this was helpful, go ahead and like the video for me, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not subscribed. Click the bell and you will be notified when I'm live. I'll see you next week for Broadband Deployment News. Bye-bye.